All right. So, thanks again, everyone who made it. Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining another Spatial Innovision. I think I should turn on my camera. Um, Let me see if I can do that. All right. Try to make it a little better. All right. So, good day, everyone. Thank you for joining on the Spatial Innovision webinar. We have an excellent one here for you today. I am Matthew Webster, Vice President of Corporate Services here at Spatial. And with me today is Mr. Roshan Clark, Deputy CEO at Spatial, and Ms. Kerry-ann Mahabeer, Training Manager at Spatial Innovision. Today, we have a very hot topic for you, transitioning from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro. Why do we call it hot? Well, based on our research, we found that many people were interested in this particular topic as they seek to improve their skills with an ever-improving Esri platform. And I'm sure that you all could agree, Esri is doing a lot of R&D work, so the platform is forever evolving. Kerry, very familiar with the technology, I might add, will guide you through the tips and tricks to make the most out of this transition. And additionally, at the end of the webinar, Spatial will be gifting you a seat to the upcoming course, migrating from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro. And how do you win? Well, be the first to answer Kerry's question at the end of the presentation, and you would win yourself a seat to that. And before we end, we'll do a question and answer section. So send in your questions using the Q&A section or the chat section, and we pass on those questions to the experts to answer. So before we dive any further into anything, I'll ask Roshan to share a brief overview about the Spatial Esri relationship, Esri partnership, and how we have improved our Esri support in recent times for some of you who may be Esri customers. And from there, we'll pass on the baton to Kerry for her highly anticipated presentation. So over to you, Roshan.
Morning, Matthew. Morning, Kerry, and morning to the list of attendees. It's a pleasure to have you all with us for another spatial webinar series, another installment in the spatial webinar series. As Matthew said, this is a very highly requested topic. So the context of this and what we aim to achieve at the end of this is to transfer some knowledge, close some gaps, and better empower our attendees and our wider list of colleagues, GIS colleagues across the Caribbean. Now, I would like to start by saying the persons here on this call, or the persons who are familiar with ArcMap, are what I would like to call our day ones, our foundational Esri users who have been there from ArcMap was the lead choice of the day in terms of the power behind the ArcGIS platform. And of course, a lot has been achieved with ArcMap. However, with every technology, there is always a evolution, and out of that evolution, out of that requirement to have a stronger, more robust, more scalable engine, ArcGIS Professional was birthed. And ArcGIS Professional has been running side by side with ArcMap for a long time. Kerry, our main speaker today, will speak more to the technical side of stuff. But we felt we always get this request, and we always understand that this is a constant area of interest to our users. How do I integrate and how do I ultimately migrate from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro? And so that was the main reason why I think I would say Kerry was the one who came up with the idea and said, let's do this to better help our colleagues understand the best practices, the technical side of stuff, and how do we move forward. So I'm not going to take too long. That's the context of this. It's to empower you and it's to share that knowledge. And we hope that at the end of it all, you throw your questions to us, and we're able to navigate and best help you to finally and ultimately have a better transition from ArcMap to Arc Pro. Now, before I go, there's also an update for us, for our customers across the region in terms of support. Some of you may have already heard of this because we've been doing a lot of awareness campaign to try and make sure everyone is aware, but we take every opportunity to share this information, which is that as of last year in November, Spatial has invested in a higher level of support being able or accessible to our customers, to you, our colleagues. And what that is us signing up a partnership with Esri Latam for the regional support center. This means that at any given time you have access to around 30 analysts covering every area of Esri, of the Esri world. As we know, it keeps on evolving, and GIS is seeping into every aspect of the society. And so we felt that it was valuable to have that level of, or that that breadth and that depth of support for our customers. So you can easily access that at any given moment through an email, esritechsupport at spatialvision.com, and that goes straight to the Esri colleagues. We still have a good hand in the support in terms of we manage it, and we work closely with the analysts to provide better insight of our customers and to sign off on the support. But the technical side of it is coming from Esri Latam, and it really is accessible 24 hours, because if you reach out to them at a time when they are on a holiday or on a weekend, what it does is it taps into a global support system, because Esri has around 6 regional support centers. So if you reach out at 2 in the morning and the Colombia office is down, it will pass through to a maybe one in India or one in Jordan, in Middle East, so that you're constantly having support at any given moment, because your GIS operations is that important to us. So we just want you to take advantage of this. Once you're on maintenance, that would be fully accessible to you. Esri Tech Support at Spatial Vision is the email address, as well as you could always fill out a web form at support.esri.com, right? So, and of course, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, Matthew, but we have a Esri Support App that will be coming in March, and that will allow you, our customers, to not only access the support through the email channel or through the web form channel, but you will also be able to have an app that you download free of cost, and it allows you to have real-time monitoring as well as submitting of cases, plus some other important additional information. So news is out, spread the word. The support app is here. Sorry, not the support app. I'm ahead of myself. The Esri support is here for you, and Esri Tech Support at spatialvision.com is the email address to send. And having said that, I hope you have a great webinar. And I would just like to pass over to my...
But quickly before you go, Roshan, how has the feedback been? What feedback you've been getting from the team?
The feedback has been awesome. We've been getting customers quoting, saying, well, first of all, since the year has started, we've had over 20 cases, and most, if not all, have returned 5 out of 5 scoring at the end of it. So they're getting 100% satisfaction. And on top of that, we have some good quotes, some testimonials about their experience with the analysts from Colombia. So it has been really a breath of fresh air for us to see how pleased our customers are. So I encourage everyone on this call, and you can tell your colleagues in your fellow organizations and even the wider GIS community that this is a accessible technical support. And I encourage you to use it, because it's there for you, and it's an entitlement that comes with your maintenance. So take full advantage of it. So yeah, this is doing great, and we look forward to your feedback as we continuously aim to improve our services to you. And I would close on that, Matthew. I would say it's doing great, and I'd pass it back to you to continue the program.
All right, excellent news, Rashawn. So why everyone is here, we can get ready for Kerry to now present. So I'm gonna hand over to Kerry. I know that Kerry has got it. So over to you, Kerry, and looking forward to an excellent presentation.
All right. So good day, everyone. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Roshan. Welcome once again to this particular webinar where I'll be looking at transitioning from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro. And by the time we get to the end of the webinar, you'll understand why we refer to it as a transition or migration instead of just a full-on switch. So for today's session, we'll be looking at a review of ArcMap. We expect that most persons on would be very familiar with ArcMap, but in the event you haven't used it in a while, we do a quick review of that. We'll get into an introduction of ArcGIS Pro. We'll look at existing content you may have and how you work with that within the Pro environment. We'll also cover the common workflows, so things you would typically do in ArcMap, how those functions work in ArcGIS Pro. We'll look at ArcMap and Pro, the pros and cons of this transition that you'll make. And then we'll look at a learning plan that has been put together by Esri that covers migrating to ArcGIS Pro. So by the time we get to the end, you'll be fairly confident, I would say, in how to proceed with this transition. Okay, so in terms of ArcMap, ArcMap has been the central mapping application that you would have been using for desktop, for ArcGIS Desktop. You use ArcMap to display and explore your GIS data sets, to create and edit your data sets, assign symbols, and to create map layouts. These are the common functionalities that you carry out from your ArcMap perspective. So your ArcMap represents your geographic information as a collection of layers, as well as other elements that you're used to that you'd put on a map. For example, your north arrow and scale bar and so on, right? So your ArcMap has been your central mapping application and continues to be, I would say. From the perspective of ArcGIS Pro and what ArcGIS Pro is, this is the next generation desktop GIS. What you will be able to do with Pro is explore, visualize, analyze your data. You can also create 2D as well as 3D scenes and maps within one interface, so in one view, one application, no switching between multiple applications. And also sharing your work is made that much easier when you're working with Pro. So at this point, Pro is making the build up then to what you will be using in the future instead of ArcMap, right? And the aim with Pro is to make the integration with the other aspects of ArcGIS that much easier to do, working with online or working with your enterprise. Now, how do you get started with Pro? To get started, you typically sign in with your credentials. So the typical workflow for using Pro is, of course, you download it and install it, right? And then you would sign in using a named user account that's tied to your ArcGIS organization. So that could be a named user coming from your enterprise GIS or your online GIS. So you put in your username and your password, you sign in, and you now have access to Pro. You can now work with Pro. That's a typical method, not the singular, but primarily that's how it goes. So sign is required if you are using a license that's managed by your organization. So your admin person gives you your username for you to be able to log in. And sign-in also enables you to access web content. So anything that might be stored or being shared online, signing in to your portal, your web portal, wherever that may lie, be it enterprise or online, it gives you access to that information stored in that way. Now, to get into some terminology of Pro. You'll notice that at the very top right corner, you'll see ArcGIS Pro Terminology Guide. A little further on in our presentation, I will show you exactly where you access that, where you get to seeing this guide. But just to give you just a few from that document, we first see a term that's called a project. Now, what is a project? And these are terms specific to Pro, right? ArcGIS Pro. Your project is a collection of related geographic data sets, maps, layouts, tools, settings, and resources. And these are all saved to a .aprx file. So in the same way, I shouldn't say previously, as you do know with a map in ArcMap and you save that, that map document stores your layers, but it doesn't necessarily store settings per se. Your project does a lot more than your map document does, which is why it doesn't necessarily have an equivalent. As you see here in the ArcMap section, it doesn't necessarily have that because it's so much more that gets stored with a project. The data is stored with it, the maps, the layouts, all the tools you use, and so on. And that's saved to a .aprx file. Now, moving right along, in terms of a map, what does a map mean? What does that mean from the Pro perspective? The map is a project item used to display as well as work with your geographic data in 2 dimensions. A map opens in a map view, right? And we'll look at view a little further down on this slide. So the equivalent to that in ArcMap is your data frame. So your data frame would have your layers and they get symbolized in the view as well. So in ArcGIS Pro, it's called a map. In your ArcMap world, it's the data frame. You also have ribbons, or a ribbon, I should say, with tabs in ArcGIS Pro. So the ribbon is the rectangular area at the very top, and we'll look at the interface shortly after this. So that is the area at the very top of the application, and it has tabs. And those tabs contains different functionalities. I'll let you know about those as well. The equivalent to this in ArcMap is the user interface where you'll find your toolbars. So where you'd right click somewhere within ArcMap to turn on or off a toolbar, it's very similar to that in terms of the concept where your tools are found. For a view in the ArcGIS Pro world is very similar to what it would be in ArcMap. It is the window representing the primary work area of your application. And if you think of your views that you have in ArcMap, where you zoom in and out on your layers and you change your symbology and so on, similar concept. So from the ArcMap perspective, you would have a map view, or you'd have your layout view where you go to create a map. For Pro though, there are very many views that you can have, not just the map and the layout. You can also have a catalog view, and you can also have a model view if you're looking at a model created by Model Builder. All right, and the final one here, there are a lot more, and you'll find those in the guide, but this is just to give you an idea that it exists as point one, and some of the more common terms that we might use when we're working with ArcMap and what those are in Pro. So the last one here is the pane or a pane. A pane is a dockable window that contains a related set of commands. And that is comparable to a dockable window in ArcMap. So in the same way you would open up our catalog in a dockable window in ArcMap, it's just referred to as a pane in ArcGIS Pro, right? But same concept applies, all right? As I mentioned, I'd let you know about the interface as well. So take a look at this. This is your ArcGIS Pro interface, and I'll let you know about each of these parts here. So to the very top, that is one, as you see labeled here. It really is reflective of this entire area to the top. And the ribbon at the top of the user interface organizes your commands in a series of tabs. So project is a tab, map is a tab, insert is a tab, analysis, and so on, right? So this entire area here is referred to as your ribbon. At point 2, where the blue project tab on the ribbon is, and that is this blue one highlighted here, this provides you access to the application settings where you can go and configure all of what you want Pro to do. You can configure a default template. You can set if you want to be able to sign in every time you open up Pro, or if you want to be signed in automatically. You can set the default coordinate system and so on, right? Moving on to 3. 3 is this area here where you're seeing the map. So 3 is an example of a view. And as we mentioned, a view in this case is your map view where you do your primary work. So this is where you see your visualization of your layers. Yep. To the left of that, this entire pane here, this is your content pane. And if you work with ArcMap now, you'll know that in ArcMap, this is called a table of content. For Pro, it's just all contents, yes? And same concept as well. Within that pane, you'll find the layers that you're working with in your Pro view. Okay, now 5, as we see to the bottom here, the bottom center area, this is a table view. So it's still called a view. The top is the map view, the bottom is the table view. The table view contains the attribute table for any layer that you have in the content pane. So in the same way where you'd right click on a layer and open your attribute table, this is where, I shouldn't say where it comes up, but this is what it looks like. Because they're dockable, you can move these around. So you can move your views around. And then finally, what you see to the very right here is an example of another pane. In this case, it's the catalog pane. Of note, I would like to point out, you can see maps as a type of option or format, so to speak, that is available from your catalog that you can open up a map directly from the catalog view. You'll see toolboxes there as well, your databases, various layouts and styles. So there's a lot you can pull from your catalog pane in the Pro perspective. So this is a introduction to your interface so you understand where things are and you're able to relate the terminology we just discussed with the interface itself. All right, now getting into a few of the common tools here, this section here to the top, these icons that you're seeing, that's your quick access tools. Those allow you to create a new map, open one that already exists, save the one you're working with, undo and redo any functions you've just executed within the map, right? And we just discussed the project and what that does. Getting into your ribbon and the tabs on your ribbon, the map tab is where you'll find fairly common tools. You can cut and paste. We have that in ArcMap. Your Explore tool is really what you use for your navigation to zoom in and out and to click on features to get information from them. Sort of like your Identify tool, right? You use the Explore tool to do that in Pro. You can view your bookmarks, change the base map you're working with, add in data, select, and so on. So that's your map tab. Your insert tab is where you would create a new map. So if you want to open up a new view with a blank map, you'd click on new map here. You'll also create a new layout if you're creating a map that has a title and scale and legend and so on, right? Here is where you also go to import maps, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a few slides to come, or create a connection to a folder. Your analysis tab is where you find your geoprocessing tools. If you wanted to create or write scripts, if you wanted to create a model using Model Builder, set the environment to say, for example, what your default coordinate system will be, and to access the geoprocessing tools. Again, we'll also talk about that a little later. Your edit tab should sound familiar. This is where you find your tools that allow you to edit your spatial as well as your attribute information. So similar things or familiar things, you'll find your snapping, where you could set if you're snapping to the end of a line, a vertex, and so on. And then you have familiar editing tools, for example, moving a feature from one place to another, reshaping a feature, splitting a polygon, for example. You have a nice drop down here that makes it easier to access those kinds of edits. And then I think of great significance, I would say, from the perspective of Pro, is the Share tab. Now, the Share tab is where Pro has made your life a little easier in terms of sharing what you have created or accessing, in other words, what is available through your portal, be that online or enterprise. You can share packages, that is putting all of the content of your map together, if I'm summing that up into one definition. Or you could share as a web map. So this gets pushed to either your enterprise portal or ArcGIS Online, the map itself. You could share a layer or styles, and there are many more options here, including print and export, the ones that we probably are most familiar with. Those are there still. All right, so now that we have an appreciation for some terminology of Pro, the interface and some of the common tools, we'll get into looking at your existing content and how you work with that now in your Pro environment. And yes, you can. All of the work that you've done before isn't just lost, right? That wouldn't be okay. So if you have existing map documents, you can absolutely work with those from the Insert tab. Let me try to get my mouse back. Okay, right. So from the Insert tab, you have the Import Map, which I mentioned. So when you click on that now, it allows you to go to the folder where you may have existing map documents being stored, and then bring those into your current workspace of ArcGIS Pro. And it will come up in a map view, and you'll be able to work with your layers and so on in the same way you did before, right? If you have existing models and scripts, then those too, you can work with those within Pro. So your ArcMap tools, the models, as well as the scripts, those can all be used in Pro. You may need to do some modification though. They have, Esri that is, has provided a tool that allows you to check these. So you can run the analyze tools for Pro that's found in your geoprocessing tool set. And this allows you to check the compatibility of a script or a toolbox you would have created before. So that tool checks your script or your toolbox, lets you know if it will run just fine in Pro, or if you might need to do some sort of edits to it before you can, or modifications to it before you can use that now in Pro. But you can work with the existing models and scripts and toolboxes that you have already. From the perspective of editing existing features. Now, in ArcMap, what we're used to is going into ArcMap and starting an edit session before you can edit, right? With Pro, by default, editing is always enabled. It might sound scary, but it's actually not. It's actually a good thing, because you still have to, if you look at the image here, you still have to save. So there is a save that you must click before it gets committed, before that is now a permanent part of your data set. But it saves you actually a few steps in terms of having to click start editing and then selecting the feature template and so on. You can just get right into editing, right? However, if you prefer that experience, then you can configure Pro to show you an edit button, and then you click that to actually begin editing. So you have that flexibility. I would encourage you to work with the default though, see how you like it first. And then if it's not your cup of tea, you can go to the configuration. Just a bit more on the graphic that you're seeing here at the bottom. This is, of course, your Edit tab, on which you'll find, well, it's not limited to the Edit tab, I should say, because you also have one here, which is from the Quick Access toolbar. And when you're editing, you can undo or redo an execution you just did. I did mention your save edits. You can save what you have modified, or you could discard those that you see here. That's for section 2. 3 is highlighting for you the functionality of doing map topology. So this is where you'd find that functionality in Pro. Here, you have a drop-down arrow for that. For 4, you can click on the arrow here to get additional options for setting your editing environment. 5, which is, I think, would be most familiar to us, where you can set up your snapping. I mentioned that before. The tolerance, if you're snapping to the end of a line and so on. For 6, here is where you have your creating and modifying as well as deleting features options. Make it quicker to click on those. 7 is your typical select features, where you're going to draw a box around some features in your view, for example. And 8 allows you to edit your features. So when you click on the attributes. So when you click on this button here, it brings up the editor, the attribute editor, and you can change informations in the values for your tables, right? Okay, so that was an overview of editing. From the perspective of the geometry, the point, lines, and polygons, and editing those, you have the Modify Features pane, and that is what you're seeing here to the right. It contains the full collection of editing tools that allows you to modify your features. So you see a list of them here. Again, should look familiar to you. Move, rotate, scale, and to the bottom you have the reshape functions. You'll notice too that there is a My Tools tab within this view, this pane. You can create a customized collection of tools if you'd like and make it quicker for you to get to those modifications that you do more often. Because as you notice here, when we're on all tools, there is a scroll down that you can do, which means this is a much lengthier list than what you're seeing. So you can take the more common modification tools that you use and create your own tool set, right? Okay. Now, from the perspective of your attribute editing, so that was geometry, points, lines, polygons. Now, when you're editing the underlying attribute table, you can do that by clicking the button that you saw on the editor tab, and that would bring up this window here, this first window sort of in the center. Yeah. So this is your attribute pane, and it contains tools for selecting features, editing attribute values, things you're used to. I don't think I need to get much deeper into what it does. And as well, you can edit from within the open attribute table. And this is what you see here a little further to the right. So the process of editing your attributes is pretty much the same, from going from ArcMap to ArcGis Pro. All right, your metadata. I know metadata tends to get ignored or is the last thing on your list of things that you do, but nonetheless, it is very important and therefore I must mention it, right? So you can manage your metadata. That would be pretty obvious, I would think, right? So the metadata that you're used to seeing traditionally from your GIS format perspective, these can be viewed and edited in Pro. So there's no need to do any kinds of upgrades or imports. You can work with them directly. Your Pro does support the metadata styles you've been used to seeing in ArcMap. And the default metadata style for Pro is your item description. And that's essentially what you're seeing here to the right, an example of that. Yeah. All right. So we've covered the interface. We've covered some of the common tools and terminologies, where you find things for editing existing features, how you import a map document that you would have created before. Now let's get into some of the common workflows in Pro. Further, I should say. So when we're looking at your feature symbology, you will now work with a pane. So in ArcMap, what you typically do is to go to the properties of the layer, click on the Symbology tab, but it's not so flexible because you have to apply an OK and then see whatever changes to the symbols that you made in that window, right? For Pro, the symbology is controlled within the pane, similar to what you see here on the right. And that allows you to see the changes as you're making them within the pane without having to close a window to then see the changes, right? And when you click the drop down here, you would see the options you're used to, symbolizing by unique values, equal interval, and so on. You can import styles as well. So if you have ever created a style set and you're concerned if you'll be able to use that, you can. It is not directly usable, so to speak, like your metadata is. It's not the same way. It's an import as well. So similar to how you would import an existing map, you would import your style set, and that is found from your Insert tab to the far right here. You have an import button where you can import your existing style set. I'm not sure if everyone uses style, so I won't spend too much time on it. Essentially, your style stores unique symbologies that you may have created, right? So you can go and use the styles that you'd have created before. From the perspective of doing your data analysis, I would have highlighted the Analysis tab. And on that tab, you'll find the option to bring up your Geoprocessing pane. And there are two familiar views, one familiar, one not so familiar views that you'll find when you open up this pane. The first is the option to do searches. So you can search for, if you type in here, the partial name of a tool that you're looking for, it would bring up the results here. You'll also notice that you have the ability to save favorites. So again, if there are tools, analysis tools you use more often than others, you can set them as favorites. If you, again, prefer to see a more traditional, so to speak, type view, then right next to your favorites, you have your toolboxes, and you'll see the view, which is probably a bit more familiar to you, where you see the containers for the different tools that you use, your 3D analysis tools, your data management tools, and so on. From the perspective of map creation or your cartography, this is probably where there is the most notable difference then from a workflow perspective. Now, to create a map from your Pro environment, again, you go to Insert, and right next to New Map, you have New Layout. So when you click on that, the first thing you have to do is to select the size of map that you want to create. So you click that, and then it takes you to a process of adding in your data frame, scale bar, north arrow, and so on. The views for that is a little different than what you might be used to, but it's all the same concept in terms of adding title and scale bar. And just to give you an idea of an output from that, you'll see here a map that was created within Pro. One of the things that or two, I should say, of the things that I really appreciate about the flexibility here is you can add in your graphs. If you've created different graphs, you can add them in on your map itself. You have callouts here with additional information. You can put in source information as well. And you still have the typical things you're used to. So here you have your legend and your title here to the top, but it's so much more attractive, I think. And it's a much more flexible environment to work with. Okay, so you now have an appreciation of working within Pro. You also now have an appreciation of what you're used to seeing in ArcMap and what that looks like from a pro perspective and what might be different as well. Now, what are the pros and the cons then of this transition, right? In terms of the pros, we'll start there. You can work within one view, looking at your 2D data and your 3D information. You can have the views be linked as well. So if you watch the graphic here on the right, you'll notice that when the user is moving around within the 3D scene, you'll see the changes happening in the 2D space as well. So it makes it much easier to work with your data in both views, in both ways. Previously, you'd have to open up a whole different application to work in 3D, be that globe or scene, right? From the perspective of sharing your content, we would have talked about that. There's an entire tab for sharing. And also, not just you sharing information, but you accessing information that has been shared. These options here from your catalog pane. So when you have your catalog pane open, there's a portal option available, and you can get information from ArcGIS Online. You can get information from your enterprise. You can get from a group information that you've shared as well, and they will come up here. Yeah, so you'd sign in. Let's say you clicked on ArcGIS Online, it would bring up the window for you to sign in, and whatever is available to you on ArcGIS Online will show up here. You can add them to the map that you're working in currently. So it makes it's a simpler workflow to get information to online and from your portal, from online. Now, what are the cons, so to speak, and why this is a transition, I would say. This is very much still a work in progress. A vast majority of the tools that you work with in ArcMap are available in Pro, but not everything is there yet. Still still a bit of work in progress. I'd say, let's say roughly 80%. There are just only a few things left. So what I'll do now is to show you this particular page where you'll find this information. And I would encourage you to explore that, because it allows you to properly plan your transition, which is the point of this. Your transition isn't a switch. You notice I said that at the very beginning. You're not switching, you're doing a transition. So I would encourage you to explore this page. I'll actually share this in the chat, this link. I'll do that right there. All right, so scrolling down on the page itself, it notes the tools that may not be available. In some cases, there is a comparable tool within Pro, and it lets you know what that is, how to explore it. So when you are getting into Pro, you should work with sort of a plan, meaning, okay, think about your workflows as they are now. Think about the tools that you currently use. Check out the page here in terms of what may not be available. Explore Pro. So it's not just a full switch. So you're going to be working with Pro as well as ArcMap, and understand what you can do in one versus the other. But there is a reason you should transition though, and we'll get to that. We'll get back to that right now, actually. All right. So the reason that we would encourage your transition or your migration to Pro is that ArcMap, in terms of support, not the application not working, let's be very clear, but the support is coming to an end. It's still a bit away from now. So this will be March 1st, 2026. You have quite a bit of time for this transition, right? But what it means is when the product life cycle ends on this date, you'll still be able to work with ArcMap. yes. But from the perspective of getting support for that from Esri, that won't be available to you anymore, right? So work on your plan for your transition. Note the workflows you work with more commonly now. Try them out in in ArcGIS Pro. Ensure that you have them covered, check all your boxes, so to speak. And that's the start to your transition, right? Oh, one last thing to note here. So there'll be a release this year, 2021, but for this release, there won't be an ArcMap 10.9. Yep. So the current release of ArcMap, which is 10.8.1, is it, so to speak. It will still function. Don't worry about that, but it's more from the support perspective. Okay. Now, in terms of your own transition, what should you do? How do you start, right? I mentioned that Esri has a learning plan that takes you through their suggested flow of transitioning. And I'll go back to that page to show you that too. Okay, one second. Zoom is a little in my way. Okay, right. So here's the page for that learning plan. I'll also put this in the chat window for everyone. Okay, I'll just walk you through this page though. So the learning plan that Esri has put together is towards the purpose of getting you through a smooth transition. So you are currently an ArcMap user, right? And we understand what is going to be happening with ArcMap, still a ways away, but you can start the process now so that you are familiar with Pro between now and March 2026. It lets you know what the goals are for the learning plan, understanding the key terminology for Pro, how you import your map documents, your geoprocessing models, and so on, how you access tools and functionalities through the ribbon. Of course, you'd be using Pro. And there are 5 courses in this plan. You start off with migrating, this is a training seminar, migrating to ArcGIS Pro from ArcMap. There's also the Instructor-Led Course, which I'll tell you a little bit more about. That is also tied to the giveaway. I hope you've been paying attention. The question is related to the content of the webinar. So you have the Instructor-Led Course, and you have a web course for getting started with ArcGIS Pro. The document I mentioned with the terminology, you can access that from here. And there's also a migration guide. So I'd encourage you to explore these and go through all of them if any at all possible. From the perspective of access, you can access these with the exception of the instructor-led course, but everything else can be accessed from signing in to ArcGIS Online. So if you have a free account or if you have an account with your organization, you can sign in and explore all of these. And then in terms of the instructor-led course now, one second while I get back to that. All right, so the instructor-led course we would offer, that would obviously be virtual given the current circumstances, right? So we would conduct this particular course online. It prepares you for the ArcGIS Pro experience, right? So you learn the essential terminology, you'll get a hands-on guide as to how you create your maps, how you edit your features, how you edit your attribute tables, how you perform analysis, and so on. So you can look out for the date for that. The table of content is available online, so you can explore that going through the learning plan that I shared. The link I shared for that takes you to the page where you could explore the the instructor-led course as well as the other courses in that learning plan. All right. So we are into the section of winning a seat. Yep. Okay. So I'm going to go through the
Yeah,
instructions.
we're ready. We're ready,
You
Kerry.
want to
Ready.
take this or should I?
No, you can go ahead. I have two
Okay.
questions here for you, so I'm looking out for the answers, but you can go ahead.
Okay, right. We'll get immediately after this, we'll get to the question and answers. Okay, so instructions. Be the first to correctly, not just answer, but correctly answer the following question. Please post your answer to the public chat. So if you don't have your public chat up and you're interested in winning a seat to migrating from ArcMap to Arcgis Pro, open up your chat window now.
So let me pause. So to the public chat. So some of you guys been sending questions directly to the panelists. Just for full transparency, select panelists and attendees when answering so that everyone can see it, just for the transparency of it. All right. Yeah, back to you, Kerry.
Right. Okay, so open up your chat window. Yes. I'm going to read through the instructions just one more time to give everyone a chance to have that open. So be the first to correctly answer the following question. That question will be up shortly. Please post your answer to the public chat window to win a seat at the next sitting of migrating from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro. All right, question time. So the question is, oh, hold on. I have to change my tool here. Okay, so a project is a collection of related geographic data sets, maps, layouts, tools, settings, and resources saved as what file extension? I was actually going to be generous and give you options. So the options are, although I see the answers very clearly already, but for completion, A, which is a.apmx, MD, sorry, B dot AP, J, AP, RJ, C dot APRX, or D dot APMX. But I see that there are very many answers already in the chat. Matthew, I'm sure you
Yeah.
have noted who the first person was that answered correctly. And again, for completion, I'll make sure it's marked on the
Yeah.
slide as well.
APRX came through like lightning.
Yeah,
I've heard
before I was
quite a
even
few
done reading.
people. Definitely, definitely. The first person to answer was actually Janelle Johnston.
Right,
That's her name. So let me make a record of that, and then we can reach out to her following the webinar because we have her contact information.
right. Thank you.
But
Okay.
thank you for wow, got quite, yeah, Johnny. Yeah, we're celebrating with you. We're celebrating with you. All
Quick on
right.
the draw, Janelle, quick.
But thanks again for all everyone that answered. And with that said, let's move over into the Q&A because we're almost at the top of the hour, right?
Correct.
All right. So the first question I have for you, Kerry, is Carolina is asking, can you make a process on a feature layer from a survey 123? I don't know
Hold
if.
on one second. Let me get my screen back. It had a moment.
Yeah, man, no problem. And remember, you can send through your questions. So far, I think we have about 3 or 4. So I'm going to go through those, but feel free to send through your questions and I'll just share them with Kerry as we go along and to ensure everyone gets their questions answered.
All right. So repeat the question for me, please, Matthew.
The question says, can you make a process on a feature layer from a survey 123? That's what's written. I'm not sure if it reads correctly or if you can interpret it.
This is in the Q&A section.
Yes, this is from
Okay.
the
All right. I'm seeing it now. Can you make a process on a feature layer? I'm not sure what you mean by process. Can
So,
you?
from my interpretation, it's possible that she would have probably wanted you to show her. So it would be good if you could probably even talk to her offline and kind of walk her through that process or help her with training on some sort.
Okay. I think she clarified any geoprocess like append. Okay. From a survey 123. I directly from Survey 123, I am not sure about that. However, the underlying data though that is being fed into your survey, if you are if you would like to run a geoprocess function on that, either through a online geoprocessing tool or via ArcGIS Pro, then yes. But directly from Survey 123, I've not seen that.
All right, so hope that helps. And if anything, we can have Carolina reach out to you. Just remind her of your email, so she could probably shoot your email directly if she has
Okay,
any further questions.
I'll put that in the chat for everyone.
Put it to all. Put it. You
Yeah,
can send it directly to her. I can send it to all attendees, whichever way.
I'll I'll put it just generally for everyone.
All right. And while you do that, second question from Ramon. How does named users translate from licenses? If we have 3 concurrent user licenses, that is seats for any 3 people in the organization, how will that work for specifically named users?
Okay, good question. The name user option for Pro is just one option. However, Pro is packaged, I guess you'd say, or to an extent, packaged with desktop. So what that means is if you have concurrent desktop licenses, your Pro in essence can behave in a similar fashion. It would mean that you would license it in sort of a separate way using your desktop licensing to get that behavior, in other words. From the perspective of the concurrent usage, it might get a little tricky. It behaves better, I guess you'd say, if it's a name user or a single use, but you can have it being concurrent as well. The workflow for that, I would probably have to investigate for you if you're interested.
All right. So, and Kerry would have shared her email below, so she can answer. And Carolina said thanks, so hopefully that helps. And if anything else, she can also email you as well. All right.
Yes.
All right. Question from Chantel. Does Pro use extensions such as ArcFM? We are currently using ArcFM. This also raises whether Pro allows for editing workflows / versioning. So, all right, let me ask one question and then answer, and we'll move to the next one. So,
Okay.
does Pro use extensions such as ArcFM?
All right. Let's find out. ArcFM, I'm not specifically clear on, but let's see if we can find that on this functionality section.
And following up, Ramon said that he's definitely interested. All right, so
okay,
you can also reach out to Ramon after.
sure.
All right, so once you find that out, then all right, let me know when I should shoot the next question.
Sure. I think there is a chance that ArcFM may not be available just yet. I know that the focus has been on the core functionalities of ArcMap coming into Pro, and ArcFM is a sort of a third-party add-on application. So I really don't know that one certainly, as in with certainty, but I can check for that for you as well. So ArcFM as an extension.
So she had a follow-up question as well, which said this also raises whether Pro allows for editing workflows / versioning. She said we typically have persons who quality assess or quality control edited sessions before posting to default.
Okay. To the best of my knowledge, yes, because you can access what you have from an enterprise perspective, because what you're describing is a workflow tied to ArcGIS Enterprise, right? You can make the connections to the database as you would be used to. And you would go through the a similar workflow, right, for the check-in and check-out. So that particular side of things, yes, that functionality should be available to you. It's
Excellent.
the FM part that we'd have to check.
Okay. And another question from Suzanne. Are the license levels for Pro the same as desktop? Or is there any link to read up on it?
Okay, so the let's take it from the top. Now, as it is now, if you have ArcGIS Desktop, you also have, depending on the version, so I think let's say to 10.5 or higher, once you have desktop, ArcGIS Desktop, which includes ArcMap, you also have access to ArcGIS Pro, because within that as well, you also have access to ArcGIS Online. So you can use your username to sign in to Pro, or you can license it separately, so to speak. So the version or the level then is tied to the level of the desktop you have. So it would be considered basic, or it would be considered standard, or it would be considered advanced. And to add to that, if you also have extensions with your desktop, those are the same extensions you have available in Pro as well. Let me see if I need to mention anything else. Pro can also be acquired separately, so to speak, and you have the GIS professional level. Let me see if I could find that quickly as we speak. So ArcGIS Pro. Professional. Okay, let's so
And
this
while you
is
do
what
that,
your, yep, go ahead.
while you do your search, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the email address again that you can get Esri tech support. So you can always email them if you have any, once you're on maintenance, you can always shoot an email, and based on the partnership that we have with the Esri Support Center, we have analysts, I think Rashawn said about 30 of them that are pretty much on standby, ready to support any of your ArcGIS needs, any of your Esri needs, from a support perspective, right around the clock, because they have analysts working in different time zones. And as you had said, based on the surveys that we've done since launch in November, the customers have come back and said, it's been a fabulous experience, and all 15 surveys that we've gotten so far has given the support center a 5 out of 5 rating. So you have excellent support at your fingertips. And we're looking to launch the app. We're currently in testing of that app, which would even make that support process even easier. So you may not even have to send an email anymore. You can just get that from the app. The app is pretty cool based on the little that I've done with it, but you can also look out for that as well. Back to you, Kerry.
Sure. All right. So I'm putting a link in the chat now that takes you to exploring the ArcGIS professional user type, which is specific to Pro. So again, just to make sure we're clear, you can have Pro within your current desktop, and it would be at the level that your desktop is at, basic, standard, or advanced. And you can also purchase, so to speak, Pro on its own, and that is considered as the professional user type, so to speak. And that is the link I just put in the chat window.
Okay. Excellent news. So Suzanne, Kerry has shared that link for you in the chat, and also sharing the reminder as promised in terms of Esri support. So currently, we don't have any more questions. I give it another minute. We're at 11:05. And again, do appreciate that everyone did find the time to spend the hour with us, most of you. Um, but if you have any more questions, send them through now. And if not, Kerry had shared her email. So if you have any follow-up questions, you can always send her an email. Just for a reminder to you, Kerry, so Ramon and Carolina, both I'm believing that probably want a follow-up conversation, so we can reach out to them after the webinar as well.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, all right. I see no more questions. So again, thanks for making the time. Roshan had to attend to another meeting, so he had to step off. But thank you all for making the time. Seeing good commendations coming through for you, Kerry. Excellent presentation, and I do agree it was an excellent presentation. And I think I might sit in you migrating from
Nice.
Arcgis course. I think I need
Sure.
here to learn. But a lot of people enjoying the presentation, and we also
Thank you.
upload this on YouTube at Spatial Vision. That's our YouTube channel. You can also watch it there, and it's also was streamed live on Facebook. So you can also go to our Spatial Innovision Facebook page if you want to rewatch the presentation, or if you want to share it with anybody. So those resources are also available to you as well. And we have a prize. We have the prize winner, so we have to reach out to the prize winner as well. So we'll make contact with you as well. I think Janil, yeah, Daniel,
Mhm.
if I pronounce your name correctly, but I think I did. So we'll also reach out to you regarding that and share information in terms of dates and any other relevant information. So thanks again for the time, and looking forward to seeing you next month. If you know anybody that's interested in drones, we're going to be talking about some drones in our March webinar. So look out for information on that, and look out for that invitation as well. All right. Thanks again, Kerry, and thanks again, everyone. And enjoy the rest of your day, and see you next month.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy
All right.
eating.
Mhm.
Bye-bye.